So once again, for a year and a half or so, maybe a bit more, I've been saying every week, I see it as a schus and a privilege. We started off at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. 2 or 3 months ago, we rejoiced that the pandemic is over. And to my dismay, at least in Israel, it's back with a vengeance. In the Haredi community as well. Past month, 350 people passed away in Israel from COVID. That's an average of more than 10 every day. So it's very disturbing. And I encourage everyone to have the booster vaccine, the third vaccine. And we started again in my shul saying Tehillim every day, 3 Pirkei Tehillim after davening in the morning. Let's hope that this coming year will be a year of Yeshuas and Refuas. So the topic today is mitzvahs Achilah Ba'erev Yom Kippur. Last week we discussed mitzvahs Atanis, Inui B'Yom Kippur. Are these two mitzvahs related, or each is a mitzvah b'fnei atzmo, balav ho baho ta'aliyah? So various different sources in Shas, Brochas Chesed Beis, Rosh Hashanah Tesomid Aleph, Yom Pei Aleph Omid Beis. The Gemara darsens from the pasuk, ve'enisem es nafshes sechem b'tisho b'chodesh, v'chi b'tisho mesanim, aloi ein mesanim elo ba'asoro. So Chazal darsen kol oechel v'ashoysa b'tshi'i mala olav ha'kosov kilo osane b'tshi'i ba'asiri. Rabbi Kiva Eger, Shuvas, Semeteh Zayin, has a very interesting question. Are noshim chayiv in the mitzvah of Achilah Ba'erev Yom Kippur? L'cha'oire, it is a mitzvah to say Sha'azaman Groma. Noshim should be exempt. Women are never chayiv by mitzvah to say Sha'azaman Groma. However, maybe, because the entire source of this mitzvah is only the enisem es nafshoy seichem. So it would make sense to say, if we learn this mitzvah from the lashon the enisem es nafshoy seichem, then women would be chayiv because they are chayiv in inui. It is somewhat similar to kol sheyeshnoi bebaltei chochumetz yeshnoi bekum achor matzah. Kol sheyeshnoi b'shomor yeshnoi b'zachor. If we learn the mitzvahs Achilah from the enisem es nafshes seichem b'tisha l'chodesh, then probably there would be chayiv and inui. The Ksav Sofer, Tshuvas Ksav Sofer, or Chaim Siman Kuf Yud Beis argues, based on Rashi both in Brochas and in Yuma, Rashi says, what is the mitzvah? Lechol v'lishtois be'erev Yom Kippurim, to enable people to fast on Yom Kippur. If you won't eat Erev Yom Kippur, it'll be very hard for you to fast on Yom Kippur. The Lashon of Rashi is, Hatkein atzmacho lehes anois. Prepare yourself for the tanis. And the Rosh says the same. Perek Ches Mesechet Yumis Siman Chov Beis. The Torah says the same in Siman Tov Reish Daled, in the beginning of Siman Tov Reish Daled. So if the Rosh, his great son, the Tur, based on Rashi, said the entire mitzvah of Achilah B'Yom Yom Kippur is to enhance and enable him to make it easier to fast on Yom Kippur, then Svara would dictate that Kol HaChayev L'S'anois Ba'asiri Chayev L'Choil B'Tshei. That is the argument of the Chassam Sofer, the Ksav Sofer Siman Kuf Yud Beis. But the Ksav Sofer says, Lo darshinan ta'ameh dekro. And if we have a mitzvah of Achilah B'Erev Yom Kippur, how would we know that this is the reasoning? and therefore it's hard to be mechadash halacha based on Tamid Dikra. The Ksav Sofer has another chakira, which is a fascinating chakira. Chodesh sheyesh b'sekona, that knows he will not fast on Yom Kippur. Those are doctor's orders, and he knows that in advance. So if he's not going to fast on Yom Kippur, does he still have a mitzvah achilah b'yev Yom Kippur? So once again, according to Rashi, Rosh and the Tur, Ha'Bahatalia, the entire mitzvah eating Yom Kippur is just to enable you to fast Yom Kippur. If you're not going to fast Yom Kippur, then you shouldn't have a mitzvah to fast Erev Yom Kippur. So this svara, based on Rashi, would be a svara lekula and lechumra. Lechumra to be machayev noshim, lekula to pater a chodesh yesh b'sekona. So the Ksav Sofer argues, lo darshin and Tamid Dikra. However, when a woman is a chodesh yesh b'sekona and she won't fast in Yom Kippur, meman afshach, she is poter melech al erev Yom Kippur. If the reasoning is to enhance your ability to fast in Yom Kippur, then chodesh yesh b'sekona doesn't need to eat. If that is not the reasoning, then it's once again mitzvah seishas man grama. So a woman that's a chodesh yesh b'sekona and she won't fast in Yom Kippur, meman afshach, is poter ma'achila v'shtia b'yerev Yom Kippurim. That is the Ksav Sofer. I want to make a few comments regarding the concept of lo darshinan Tamid Dikra. Minchas Osha Parshas Chukas, Madura Kama. Madura Basra, this very same simon is about 3 times the size as Madura Kama. And Madura Basra, we're working on it, should be out in a few months, but it'll still take some time. So regarding the sugya of Tamid Dikra, I have a very fundamental argument with modern Hachsam Sofer. I differentiate between Tamei HaMitzvahs that we find in Moreh Nevuchim, Sefer HaChinuch, in Sifrei Machshava, Sifrei Musar, Midrash Chazal, and between Tamei HaMitzvahs that we find in Rashi, Rashba, Rosh, like the reasoning of Achilah v'Shtia b'Erev Yom Kippur. These are poskim. These are Matikei Hashmur, Avos HaHalacha. So when Rashi on the Gemara says a reasoning, that is not Tamid Dikra, that is Agdora. That is Yesoidus in Halacha. And I think we definitely could be Kevei Halacha. Al pi Rashi v'Harosh, they are Amudei HaHalacha. That is not Tamid Dikra. Sometimes a tam is a definition. It's a Hagdorah. But let's leave that discussion for another opportunity. So Rabbi Akiva Eiger is the first one to ask the question, Are Noshim Chayev Achilah v'Shtia b'Erev Yom Kippur? The Ksav Sofer follows up in the footsteps of Rabbi Akiva Eiger, and he says, it depends what the reasoning is. According to Rashi, if it's just to make it easier to fast on Yom Kippur, then women would be chayiv. That is not the svara of Rabbi Akiva Eiger. Rabbi Akiva Eiger's argument is a different one, and he doesn't bring Rashi, he doesn't touch the question, why do we have a mitzvah to eat on Yom Kippur? Rabbi Akiva Eiger's argument is a more fundamental one. Bearing in mind that the mitzvah of Achilah b'Erev Yom Kippur is given to us in the pasuk ve'enisem es nafsho seichem betishu l'chodesh. It is the pasuk of Inui. Therefore, it would be reasonable to argue if the mitzvah of Achilah is given in the lashon of Inui, then kol hachayev be'inui chayev ba'achila. Me'ein kol sheyeshna b'shoma yeshna b'zocher kol sheyeshna b'baltoichal yeshna b'kum achoyel matzah. What the Ksav Sofer obviously wasn't aware of is, besides Rashi, many other Rishonim and Gedolei Adoros gave other reasonings, other objectives, other tamim to the mitzvah of Achilah v'Shtia b'Erev Yom Kippur. And each and one of these ta'amim could have halachic implications, could have halachic ramifications. Not only Rashi, Rosh, and the Tur. I think it's extremely reasonable what Rashi says. Why would there be a mitzvah, Achilah v'Shtiyah B'Erev Yom Kippur, if not to enhance the tzayim on Yom Kippur? However, at least I am aware of 7 different ta'amim that we find in Rishonim and the great Poskim. We started off with Rashi and the Rosh. Hatkein atzmacho lehisanois be'erev Yom Kippur. Rabbeinu Yoresh Tshuva, Chela Gimel, Sif Ches Tes Yud brings 3 different pirushim. Number 1, it is a manifestation of Simcha and Rosh Hashanah. Chazal say, and it is a posik in Novi, Lechu, Ichlu Madanim, Shtu Mamtakim, Shilchu Monois Le'ein Nochaloi, Al Teyot Sevo, Ched Vas Hashem Hi Ma'uzchem. That is a medrash, when they have a court case, Loif Shim Shchoirim, Misatvim B'Shchoirim, and they are ba'atzvis, but we know Sha'Kodesh Baruch Hu Yasalonu Nisim, and that is why Rosh Hashanah is a yom of simcha, and that is the mitzvah of Achilah v'Shtiyah B'Erev Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, we can't rejoice. Yom Kippur is a mitzvah of Inui, but that is why Erev Yom Kippur is an expression of simcha to reflect our betochen and amunah. And therefore, it is a reflection of simcha. Just like Rosh Hashanah is a simcha, Erev Yom Kippur is a simcha as well. Another reason, Simchas Yom Tov. Simchas Yom Tov is B'Achilah v'Shtiyah. Simchas Yom Tov is a Suda. And Yom Kippur is Makor HaKodesh. Essentially it's Yom Tov, but we can't eat on Yom Kippur, and that is why the mitzvah of Simchas Yom Tov is Erev Yom Kippur. So according to the first reasoning of Rabbeinu Yoina, it is the Simcha of Kaporas Avonos, like the Simcha of Rosh Hashanah. According to the second Svara, Simchas Yom Tov. Every Yom Tov, Mikra HaKodesh is a mitzvah of Simcha. Svara number 3. והשלישis, למען נחזק להרבויס תפילה ותחנונים ביום הכיפורים, ולא שעצס בנפשנו על התשובה ועיקוריה. So Rabbeinu Yoina says, when a person is pain and in suffering, and he suffers from pangs of hunger, he cannot concentrate on tshuva. His tefillah will be diminished, kavonas tefillah. And that is the third reasoning. Why do we have a mitzvah of Achilah v'Shtiyah B'Erev Yom Kippur? Not to enable us easier to fast, but rather to give us more koyach to daven, cheshbon hanefesh, leschanan al nafshenu, and to do tshuva. So in each and every one of these vodas would reflect on the fundamental questions of Rabbi Akiva Eiger and the Ksav Sofer. Well, women have to daven as well, and they need to do tshuva as well. And they should rejoice in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's rachamim as well. How about second time, Simchas Yom Tov? Well, that depends on another question. Are Noshim Chayiv and Simchas Yom Tov? Which is a discussion in the place we won't get into. Now, in the Achrayim, we have many other questions regarding Mitzvah Achilah v'Shtiyah B'Erev Yom Kippur. Besides Rabbi Akiva Eiger's question regarding women, the Ksav Sofer's shaila regarding Chodesh Sheyesh B'Sakona. Do we need to be Kaveya Suda in Erev Yom Kippur? Is there a mitzvah of Kaveya Suda, like Shabbos and Yom Tov, or just eat and drink? You could nash all day. There's no reason to be Kaveya Suda. And it depends on the various different reasonings, various different timing. If it is just you should be strong and feel good, and you should be able to fast. There's no need for Kviyas Suda. According to the third time of Rabbeinu Yoina, we should be strong and satisfied. We should better be able to concentrate on our davening. No need for Kviyas Suda. But if it's Simchas Yom Tov demands Kviyas Suda. If it is similar to the Simcha of Rosh Hashanah, Madanim, Shtumam Takim, probably we also need to be Kviyas Suda. Another question that the Chemed deals with, is there a Shir, Mitzvah Achilah B'Yerev Yom Kippurim? Every Mitzvah Achilah in the Torah has a Shir Kazayis. Mitzvah Aseh, Mitzvah Lo Ta'aseh. Mitzvah Matzah, Mitzvah Morer, Mitzvah Korban Pesach Kazayis. Nevela, Treifa, Minim Tameim Kazayis. The only Yisr that is not Kazayis, that has a different Shir, is Yom Kippur. Koiseves. And why is that? Yesuv Daita. Yesuv Daita has a bigger share. Mitzvah Achilah B'Yerev Yom Kippurim, is it Kazayis? Like all the other Mitzvah Achilah Shabbat? Or maybe Shnei Tzdodim Shaloisa HaMadbeya. Isser Achilah B'Yom Kippur and Mitzvah Achilah B'Erev Yom Kippur, two sides of the same coin. This once again comes back to the four different reasons, four different tamim. If the mitzvah Achilah B'Shtiyah, Erev Yom Kippur, is associated with Simchas Yom Tov or Simchas Rosh Hashanah, probably this year would be a Kazayis. But if the objective, if the goal is to make you strong and to make you feel well, that is probably a Suvidaita. So the minimal share would be a Kaseres, because Yasuvidaita is the opposite of Inui. And the objective is you should be satisfied every Yom Kippur. You should be able to fast Yom Kippur, whether you should be able to fast or you should be able to concentrate on your tefillas, and the svara would be probably, we would need a Kaseres. A child 6 years old, 7 years old, but he doesn't fast on Yom Kippur. There is no mitzvah chinuch to have a child fast on Yom Kippur. Would that be similar to a choilish sheyesh bo sakana? He's not going to fast on Yom Kippur, but will there still be a chinuch, mitzvah chinuch, kol oechel v'shoysev, b'erev Yom Kippur? Well, one could be machalik between a choilish sheyesh bo sakana and mitzvah chinuch. And one would say, chinuch is different. After all, when he's going to be a gadol, he will fast. And therefore, we should have a mitzvah to be mechanechim to eat, even though he's not fasting right now. It still would be a mitzvah of chinuch. What I mean to say, there are many questions and many chakiras in the mitzvah achilah v'shtiyah b'erev Yom Kippur. Noshim, chodesh yesh b'sekona, koten shegi ala chinuch, kazayas or kaseves. Is there b'chlal a need of kviyas suda or just eat and drink, whether you're kviyas suda or not? 5 different shaylas. And all of them would l'chayra depend on the various different reasons. I started off this year by saying we find 7 different ta'amei ha-mitzvah. And up to this point, I only mentioned 4. Rashi, Rosh, and Tur, you should be able to fast better and easier. Rabbeinu Yoina, Simchas HaKapora, Simchas Yom Tov, to enhance our kavanah and give us the concentration to do tshuva and cheshbon hanefesh. Sheboili aleket, Siman Shin Zayin, we find 2 different svaras, somewhat far-fetched, interesting. Number 1, the more you eat Erev Yom Kippur, the more difficult it'll be to fast on Yom Kippur, which is an interesting assumption. I don't know whether biologists would confirm this svara. Maybe if one eats excessively, he will have difficulty to fast a day later. I don't know. But that is one of the Rishonim, the Sheboili Aleket. And it's mamish the opposite of Svodas Rashi. We have a mitzvah to eat and drink Erev Yom Kippur in order to make it more difficult to fast on Yom Kippur. According to this Svara, I think the shir would be neither a kazayas nor a kasevis, but the mitzvah is to eat a lot. Because it's a milsa de pshita, eating Sunday would make it easier to fast Monday. Fasting 2 days would be sekonos nefashos. So obviously, the svara of the Shabbat Lekut would only be, you need to eat excessively, and that would make it more difficult to fast a day later. I'm not that much into dietary sciences, but maybe it would depend what one eats and not only how much he eats. Maybe some foods would make it easier to fast a day later, and some would make it more difficult. But the very svara of the Shabbat Lekut is a chiddush. Many times I was asked by people, and I'm asked every year before Yom Kippur, before Tisha B'Av. Today in the market, you have various different tablets, kalei hatzam, which if you take these tablets erev the day before fasting, it's supposed to make it easier to fast. And I was asked, is that legitimate? The Torah wants us to fast. Maybe it should not be easy. Another interesting question, when Shabbos falls erev Tisha B'Av, or before another fast day, could you take those pills on Shabbos? Would that be defined as hachana, mishabbos l'chol? So for many reasons, it definitely is not hachana. And regarding the question, is it legitimate to make an effort to make it easier to fast? L'chol, it's a machlokes rishonim. According to Rashi, Rosh, Tur, of course it's legitimate. That is the entire mitzvah of eating Erev Yom Kippur. So the Torah not only relies on sensible people you probably will eat if you need to fast tomorrow, it's a mitzvah to eat. And the entire objective of this mitzvah is to make it easier to fast. So what would be the problem taking a capsule or a tablet or anything to make it easier to fast? Now, I don't know whether this works at all, whether it makes sense, but I'm dealing on the assumption that it is effective. So according to Rashi, of course it would be legitimate. But according to the Shabbat Lekut, maybe it would be better not to take those tablets because his interpretation of the mitzvah Achilah Yom Kippur is just the opposite of Rashi, to make it more difficult to fast. And then the Shabbat Lekut brings another explanation from his brother, Reb Binyamin. And the Shabbat Lekut quotes this brother many times in his Sefer. And Reb Binyamin said, the mitzvah of Achilah v'Shtiyah B'Erev Yom Kippur is la'oitzi melibon shel tzedaikim. The tzedaikim did not accept the Messiahs of Chazal. It is Chazal that say, the posek ben nisem es nafshe seichem b'tisha b'chodesh doesn't mean fasting, it means eating and drinking. But the tzedaikim always follow the text of Torah Shebachsav. And they maintain it's a mitzvah to fast 2 days. 9 and 10. There is a mitzvah. According to all the previous Talmud, 5 in number, it might be a mitzvah d'oraisa. According to Rabbi Binyamin, the brother of Shabbat Lekut, it definitely is only a mitzvah d'rabbanan. There cannot be a mitzvah d'oraisa la'oitzim miliban shel tzedaikim. The tzedaikim weren't around when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave Torah by Har Sinai. So according to Rabbi Binyamin, it definitely would only be a mitzvah d'rabbanan. Reasoning number 7 is found in the Prisha. So the Prisha is not one of the Rishonim, later generation, going back more than 400 years. The Prisha in Siman Tov Reish Dalet says, we have a mitzvah of eating Erev Yom Kippur, just to make it clear that the fast on Yom Kippur is l'shem mitzvah, l'shem shemayim. And therefore, the more you eat Erev Yom Kippur, it just proves that it's not coincidental that you're fasting because you don't have what to eat, or you don't like to eat, or for medical reasons. So the fact that you eat excessively Erev Yom Kippur and then you stop and you fast in Yom Kippur proves that this is Etzayin L'Shem Shomayim. So these are the 7 different reasonings. So we have the tour. מאהבת הקדוש ברוך הוא איסור שלא יציב על השר הזה ליום אחד בשונה ולתיבוסם וכפר ולסיים. וציב המשיוך וישו תחילה כדי שיוכלו להסנס ושלא להזק להם הועינוי. And then we have the pre-show at the bottom of the page. ואף שלא יאמר טעם אחר. שהציבו כדי שיהיה ניכר וגולי ציווי הקדוש ברוך הוא שציבור על השר הזה במסירי. ואם מסנה גם כבתשי, לא יהיה ניכר הציווי, אלא יום לכל אחד מסנה, אם שירצה, ולא ידעו בקדושת יום הכיפורים. And therefore, we have a mitzvah to eat on Shi in order to fast on Asi. Coming back to the fundamental question of Rabbi Akiva Eiger, are women exempt from this mitzvah because it's a mitzvah sasei shazman groma, or haba hatalia? Talis and Yom Kippur and eating and drinking Erev Yom Kippur are 2 sides of the same coin. Haba hatalia. I quoted 3 different sources in Shas Bavli. In all the sources of Bavli, the formula is the same. The nusach is the same. Kol oichel v'ashoyse b'chi, Malan Olav Kilo Asanet Shi Va'asiri. In She'iltas that Rav Achai go and Kuf Samach Zayin, it's a different nusach. Kol Oichel V'shoyse B'chi Umesane Ba'asiri. Malan Olav Kilo Asanet Shi Va'asiri. Who was the She'iltas? It's a Machlekes Tosfos and the Rashbam twice in Shas. So there's the Beis and Zvochem as well. The Rashbam maintains that Rav Achai is the same Rav Achai that's mentioned in the Gemara, and he was one of the later Amoraim. Tosfos says no. The She'iltas was one of the Gaonim. Rav Achai Gaon is not Rav Achai that's found in Shas. According to the Rashbam, She'iltas has extreme significance, extreme weight. It's actually Chazal. According to Tosfos, well, it's still an important sefer, Kufas Hagoinim, but it's not Chazal. So the nusach of this mama is different. And the She'iltas in its Kol Oichel V'shoyse B'chi V'mesana B'asiri, then Malan Olav Kilo Asanet Shi V'asiri. I don't think it's a machlokes. Goes without saying that even according to the Bavli, if a person fasts and Tisha L'Chodesh, and he eats on Yom Kippur, he's an Avariyan. But still, maybe he would get schar mitzvah for eating Erev Yom Kippur. Maybe. Well, if he put on tzitzis Erev Yom Kippur, would that be taken away because he ate on Yom Kippur? Or he put on tefillin? So if the mitzvah of eating Erev Yom Kippur is to enhance the tzom in Yom Kippur, then it goes without saying, if you don't fast and Kippur, don't have a mitzvah Yom Kippur. And we need to judge the same from all the different reasons, all the different Tama mitzvahs. But I think that the nusach of the She'iltas makes it clear. Ha b'ha tamya. And therefore, kol oichel v'ashoyse b'chi umisane ba'asiri, it is only then maran olam hakosav kilo asanet shi v'asiri. And this would give additional weight to the tzad of Rabbi Akiva Eiger, that the entire mitzvah of eating Erev Yom Kippur is only for those that fast on Yom Kippur, and that is definitely based on Rashi, Rosh, and the two. So we brought 7 different tamim, and I think the most important one is Rashi, Rosh, 2. I made an argument at the beginning of this year. How do we define Tamei HaMitzvahs? So I said, I have a machlekes with a Chassam Sofer. It's a lopsided machlekes. Who am I? Ofa ve'efer ani tachas kapes raglo. Al kachi darko shel Torah. So in 4 different shuvas, the Chassam Sofer says, Lo dershin and ta'amar akro. In one shuva, we're dealing with shuvas arashbo, and the other shuva we're dealing with trumas adeshen, Rosh, and I say, when Gedolei HaPoiske Matike HaShmua Meforshe HaShas explain mitzvahs, that is not what we call Tamei HaMitzvahs. And those Rishonim definitely have halachic relevance. So I do differentiate between Rashi, Rosh, and Tur. And that's the most fundamental approach. We need to eat Erev Yom Kippur to enhance the fasting in Yom Kippur. I think Rabbeinu Yonah Shar Tshuva has lesser weight. Not because Rabbeinu Yonah was less of a gadol than the Rosh or the Tur. Agav, Rabbeinu Yonah was not only a chassid, one of the major Rishonim. We have Aliyas de Rabbeinu Yonah on Bava Basra, Talmid Rabbeinu Yonah Masechet Brochus. Rabbeinu Yonah, like all the other Rishonim, was a great posek and a great teacher of Torah. He gave us not only the Shar Tshuva and Sefer HaYira and Shar Avodah, but Sforim HaMasechtas, just like all the other Rishonim. But nevertheless, Shar Tshuva is a Sefer Musa. So the Tamim that we find in Shar Tshuva do not have the same weight and significance as Rashi, Rosh, and the Tur. Same applies to the Shabbat Yaleket. And the Prisha wasn't the Rish. So each and every one of these 7 different approaches is interesting, but I think the one that has the most halachic relevance would be Rashi, Rosh, and Tur, because these are Matike Hashmoa, Me'irei HaTorah B'kol Mokam B'mokam. The Rambam doesn't bring the mitzvah of Achilah B'Erev Yom Kippur, which is interesting. Neither in Sefer HaMitzvahs, nor in Hilchos Shvisas also, which that would be a huge chiddush. But one of the guiding lights of the Rambam was the Rif. Neither does the Rif bring this Gemara. So we have Rif on Brochus, we have Rif on Rosh Hashanah, we have Rif on Yuma. And in none of these 3 Masechtas does the Rif bring the Mama Chazal, why? It's a gewaltige question. Neither the Rif nor the Rambam doesn't bring this halach. L'chayra, we would say, the Rif and the Rambam maintain ein halachic emoisi because the same posuk, is the source of the Sefer Yom Kippurim. And the Rambam does paskin perek alef Hilchos Shvisas Osar Alochav sheyesh the Sefer Yom Kippurim. The Rambam paskins there is no to Sefer Shabbos, and there's no to Sefer Yom Kippur regarding Isam Alochav, but there is the Sefer Yom Kippurim regarding the Nisam Es Nafshes Seichem Misar Achilah V'Shtiyah. So the Rambam learns this posik Benisam is not Shechem B'Tishal Chodesh for the Sefer Yom Kippurim, and therefore he doesn't pass him the mitzvah of Kol Ha'oichel V'Shoiseh Malon V'Kos Akilu V'Sana B'Asiri. But that's not correct, because the Rambam does bring the mitzvah of Achilah B'Erev Yom Kippurim. I just said he doesn't. Does he or doesn't he? He doesn't bring it in Sefer HaMitzvahs. So obviously it's not a mitzvah d'oraisa. He doesn't bring it in Hilchos Shvisas Osar, which are the dinam of Yom Kippur. So obviously it's not a mitzvah d'oraisa either. Where does he bring it? Hilchos Nedorim. What does that have to do with Hilchos Nedorim? Perek Gimel Halacha Tes Hilchos Nedorim, when the Rambam brings the halacha neder chal devar mitzvah. If a person makes a neder, I'm not going to eat matzah. I'm not going to eat morah. He can't eat matzah and morah. Ein hashavuach al davar mitzvah, but another is chal al davar mitzvah. Hanish balavatles a mitzvah devorav betelem, hanoide lavatles a mitzvah devorav kayamim. And one of the examples that Rambam writes, if a person made a neder not to eat on Erev Yom Kippur, then he doesn't eat on Erev Yom Kippur. And he brings this halacha together with other mitzvahs of Akhila. So obviously, there is a mitzvah to eat Erev Yom Kippur. So why doesn't the Rambam bring this mitzvah and say for a mitzvahs? Or even in Hilchos Shvisas also? So I mentioned before, Achronim deal with the question, is this a mitzvah d'oraisa or a mitzvah d'rabbanan? At least according to one out of the seven, definitely is a mitzvah d'rabbanan. According to Rabbi Yochanan, according to Shabbat Aleket LaHoitzim Eleven Shel Tzadokim, it can be a mitzvah d'oraisa. According to all the other reasons, might be a mitzvah d'oraisa. Might, maybe, maybe not. According to all the different reasons, it might be a mitzvah d'rabbanan, and the pasuk is only an asmachta. And if it is an asmachta, then it could be pshutoi shel mikro is tesefes Yom Kippurim, but Chazal b'derech drash bring it as an asmachta to the mitzvah of Akhila v'Shtiyah b'Erev Yom Kippur. That is very likely. But it still would not explain why doesn't the Rambam bring this halacha in Hilchos Shvisas also. If he does bring it in Hilchos Nedorim, shelo b'mkoimo. My feeling is, and this is a very strong feeling, Chazal do not say mitzvah lechol v'lishtis b'erev Yom Kippur. No. This is not a halacha that we find b'loshen tzivui. Kol oichel v'ashoyse b'tshi. Maran olav akosov kilo salat shivasi. I feel very strongly. It's a zgula. It's a midas chasidus. It's not a din. It's not a chiyuv. Neither min haTorah nor min haRabbanan. And it is very noteworthy. Nowhere do Chazal say mitzvah lechol v'lishtus be'erev Yom Kippurim. To me, it seems similar to what we find in Megillah Daf Gimel Amud Aleph. Kol ha'magadol yosef b'torach Weiss mala on ha'kosov kilu yoldoi. Kol ha'magadol olav maran olav ha'kosov kilu yoldoi. Is he kind the mitzvah of priority? Of course not. Of course not. It's not his child. It's his gula. Maran olav ha'kosov kilu yoldoi. Kol ha'mahalach arba ames b'yetz Yisrael. Muftach lo yishben olam haba. Is that a mitzvah? Is that a chiyuv? We had other opportunities to discuss the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. But there is no mitzvah lehalech daled ames be'eretz Yisrael. So obviously it's somewhat of a segula. Kol ha'mahalach arba ames b'yetz Yisrael. Muftach lo yishben olam haba. Kol ha'magadol yosef b'torach Weiss maran olav kilu yoldoi. Kol ha'oichel v'ashoyse b'tshi maran olav kilu esanat shivasi. It's a segula. Probably it is chasidus. And that is why it should be no wonder that the Rambam doesn't bring it. Not in Sefer HaMitzvahs, because it definitely is not a mitzvah d'oraisa. It's not even a mitzvah d'rabbanan. And that is why we do not find it b'loshen tzivui. So my understanding of the Rif and the Rambam would be, it's a segula b'yalma and a midas chasidus. And I think that makes a lot of sense regarding the various different reasonings, various different tamim. So if the Indian of Akhila v'Shtiyah b'Erev Yom Kippur is to enhance and make it easier to fast in Yom Kippur, it's not really mistaber that that should be a mitzvah or a chiyuv. We would trust any sensible person. If you need to fast tomorrow, then eat today. So it's just the right thing to do. V'afar piken it's a chiddush that a neder is chal levato midas chasidus. After all, it's chazal. And Chazal are masmich this principle on a pasuk. And therefore, it is a revusa in Hilchos Nedorim that the neder is chal levatel, both a mitzvah gemura and a mitzvah chasidus, but this would explain why we find it in Hilchos Nedorim, but we do not find it in Hilchos Shvisas Sosa in the context of Yom Kippur. So we have the Rambam Perigim Alochetas Anoidish Yotzim B'Shavas O B'Yom Tov Chayev Rotzim Shanador Mechalas O Dvar Mitzvah Kamo Shebiyar No V'Chein Eloido Shiyotzim Yom Rishon O Yom Shlishi Kol Yom O V'Poga Boi Yom Zeh Pareu Yom Tov O Erev Yom Kippurim Arei Ze Chayev Lotzum Bein Tzorach Lo Yom Rosh Chodesh. So Rosh Chodesh is not a Yom Tov. We don't have a mitzvah of a Samachta B'Chagecho, but it is a minig to eat Laharis V'Sud Rosh Chodesh. So Yom Kippur, Erev Yom Kippur comes before Rosh Chodesh, but just like Rosh Chodesh is not a Chiyuv Gomer, same would apply to Erev Yom Kippur. It still is a Chiddush that a neder is chal levatel midas chasidus. Tamtzes hadvarim, sholosh machlokes b'davar. Some say it's a Chiyuv d'oraisa. Others say, no, it's only the Rabbanan. And my understanding, B'shittas HaRav Rambam, it's not even a Chiyuv the Rabbanan, but rather a Midas Chasidus. When Chazal say, Kol Woichel V'Shoyse, Be'ev Yom Kippur, Malan Olav Kilo, Nisana B'Shiva Asiri, would that apply to all Chameshes Inuyim or not? Once again, this question would be dependent on the various reasonings. If it's just to make it easier to fast or easier to concentrate on your tefillas, has nothing to do with Shar Inuyim. Rechitza, Sicha, Niras Asandl, Tasma Shemeto, doesn't have a shaykhis. If it is, according to the Prisha, just to prove that the Inui is L'Shem Shomayim, that should apply to all Chameshes Inuyim. Just to prove, yes, you wore shoes till a minute before Yom Kippur, and you washed, and you did Chameshes Inuyim, to prove that when you're depriving yourself of all these bodily delights on Yom Kippur as L'Shem Shemayim, why wouldn't it apply to other Chameshes Inuyim? It's not really a kasha, but it is a ha'ara. I just want to once again to just emphasize that each of these 7 different Tami HaMitzvah could have halachic implications. The only source which I am aware of is a very far-fetched chiddush, Sefer Mekor Chaim. The Mekor Chaim is on Shulchan Aruch Chaim, is the Sefer of Chavis Yorah. And at the end of the Sefer, there are psukim ktsurim, very short oras, Tov Reish Daled. The Chavis Yorah quotes, Shumati Mechocham Echad, that there is a mitzvah l'kayim oina erev Yom Kippur, just in the light of Divrei Chazal, Kol Roich V'Shoyse Erev Yom Kippur, Maron Avokos Kilo Salat Shiva Asiri. The same would apply to a mitzvah oina b'leil erev Yom Kippurim. We do not find this in any other posek, and therefore ein halachic moisoi. But the Chavis Yorah was a gadol sheli dolim. Same generation as the Magen Avraham. He was somewhat younger than the Magen Avraham. And the Chavis Yorah writes that when the Magen Avraham came out, he decided that there's no point in printing his sefer because the Magen Avraham is far greater than what he has to offer. And that was the Chavis Yorah writes, Be'im Vasanus. So this is a Gavaldig Chiddush. One additional point, which brings us back to last week's shir. Last week, we discussed the mitzvah Tanas B'Yom Kippurim. And the entire shir was about a fundamental question. Is the mitzvah Tanas B'Yom Kippurim similar to other Isurei Achilah V'Shtia, or is it a totally different concept of Inui? And I brought 5 different Chidushim of Achrayim, which are dependent on this question. One of them was a Chassam Sofer. We even had it on our screen last week, some Sefer Hashanah Daftas. He'iru einai min hashamayim. Gewaltige Chiddush. That if a person needs to start fasting Erev Yom Kippur, so when Tzeisek HaChovam comes, he should already be Ktsas Ma'una. And that is Pashte Dekra of Benisim Nafshechem B'Tishul HaChodesh. I said that the Seder Mishnah writes the same, Reb Wolf Boskovich. We also find this Chiddush in Reb Meshulam Igra. Reb Meshulam Igra was one of the biggest Charifim in his generation. He was Rav in Pressburg before the Chassam Sofer. He was slightly older than the Chassam Sofer, and he was known as a great Charif. No wonder that he is Mechadish this Chiddush. So this Chiddush is shared by, say, the Mishnah, Reb Meshulam Igra, and the Chassam Sofer. But last week I said it's not mistaber because, in my understanding, B'Yom Kippurim is Issa Achilah V'Shtia, just like any other din of Achilah V'Shtia. The only reason the Torah answers Achilah V'Shtia B'Loshen Inu is Lelamedcha, that has a different shir. She is not Kazais, but a Kaseves, which is the shir of Yisur B'Daitan. We find a similar Chiddush in Shebolei Haleket that I quoted before, Siman Shin Zayin. However, not the same explanation. But the Shebolei Haleket does write that Pshutoi Shel Mikra, this is Drash, Kol Oichel B'Shoyse. But Pshutoi Shel Mikra must be explained. So the Shebolei Haleket writes that yes, there is a mitzvah of Inui and Yom HaTshi'i. Let's see. Ochir Reb Binyamin, could we scroll up a bit? V'ochi Reb Binyamin perish. כל רוח בשב בתשיעי, כאילו נסענו תשיעי ועשירי, לא יצא מילים של צדוקים משנסענו גם בתשיעי. לפי שלא ידעינה כוסף לידר, שאלה לחכמים. וחכמים דורשו עינוי זה, שוב אכילה ושתייה. אך שצורך להפסק אכילוסוי מבעוד יום. והרי הוא כאילו נסענו תשיעי ועשירי. שמפסק אכילוסוי מבעוד יום, בעוד שהוא יום תשיעי, עד שלא יקונס ועשירי, הרי הוא כאילו נסענו תשיעי ועשירי. No, it's not about the Sefes Yom HaKippurim. אלא הודיע שכך הדין. שאוכל ושעשה כל היום, ועושה שוקל החשיב עלוי כתנס שלוים. והרי היום נחלק לשניים, כמו אך ביום הראשון תשביס עשור מבתיכם, חצי עושה וחצי מותר. And that is actually number 8. And I'll try to explain this Gavaldige Chiddush. Actually, we should be fasting 2 days, but it's dangerous to fast 2 days. So the Torah says, Miktsas hayoim kekuloi. And therefore, most of the day you can eat, but you start at Tzayim b'Tshii, and that part of the day is Ke'ilu Kol Hayom, as if Miktsas Hayom Kekuloi. So the Chiddush of the Chassam Sofer is found in Shebolei Haleket, but the reasoning is a different one. According to the Chassam Sofer, Inui is only on Yom Kippur. The reasoning to start to be Erev Yom Kippur is when Yom Kippur comes, but you should already be somewhat pained by hunger. That's not the Shebolei Haleket. The din is the same. But Shebolei Haleket says, for some reason, we actually need to fast 2 days. Chiv ve'asiri. But day number 1, Miktsas Hayom Kekuloi. And even if you fast for one fleeting moment, it is as if Mala Olam HaKosov Kirosanet Chiv ve'asiri. So we actually have 8 different approaches. The most significant one, as I said, is Rashi, the Rosh, and the Tur. So this is one of the easy mitzvahs. And when we eat Erev Yom Kippur, we eat them in Mechavan Hashem Shemayim and Hashem and Hashem Mitzvah. So it is one additional mitzvah that we chaparain before Hayom HaKodesh v'Hanoira Shu Kates Mechila Slicha v'Kapora l'Kol Yisrael. We should all have a ksiva v'chasim atoiva b'sifrim shel tzadikim gemurim. A good gebench to all of you, and we'll see you Bezrat Hashem next Sunday. Kol Tov.